Hello, my name's Bernadette Jansen. I'm the Director of the School of Renovating, and I want to thank you for watching this presentation. So basically, this is just a brief meeting with the presenters that I've asked or invited to present at our upcoming New Directions in Renovating conference. This is a one-day conference for women who are interested in renovating for profit. And so the thing with professional renovating, so I'm not talking about the DIY type renovating, I'm talking about basically serious renovating where you structure your renovations so that you're not doing DIY, that you are project managing the project to create a serious income. And you can't do it on your own. And so what I've done is brought in invited some specialists that I know and trust to do work on my projects and affairs and to share their expertise with you. So today we're just going to have a quick snippet just to give you an idea of the sorts of things that they will be sharing on the day. So I've got three specialists today. I've got Belinda Grundy, who is the Director of BG Property Services. She is a professional home stager or stylist. She also has property styling online and Right Size Your Property, so a service for downsizers. So Belinda's our first presenter. Then we have Brian Goodridge, who is a chartered accountant who specialises in property. So the normal accountant you would use is probably not suitable for if you have property transactions, because the law is so complex. You need someone that is familiar with the taxation laws relating to property. So that's why we always use someone that specialises in property. And our third specialist is Mike Mortlock, who is a quantity surveyor. So you may not have met a quantity surveyor before, but they provide a very specific service that assists with costing your renovation, which is a very important part of the profit-making process. Okay, so what I'm going to do is to actually ask our people to, I guess, answer a few questions to just give you a sense of the type of information we will be sharing on the day. And the first person I'm going to go to is Belinda. And Belinda, I'd like you to perhaps share the types of things that you look at the end of a project when you're styling a project or a property to sell. What are the important things to think about in terms of buyer objections, addressing the buyer objections to the property?
Probably my tip number one would be to do your research and find out who that target market is. So you can quiz your agent, you can find out who's moving into the local area, who's moving out, what's happening with the local schools. It could be absolutely anything that where you can get your information from. So when you know who that buyer is, then that's about targeting them and making sure that the makeover actually is tailored to them. So our job is to widen the appeal and then obviously create competition, and that's where that all starts.
Okay, excellent. And so what would be your three, I guess, best tips to someone that's actually presenting a property for sale?
So in the actual physical getting ready for the sale, keeping that target market in mind is number one. So making sure that you're not renovating for you, you're actually renovating for them. That's the biggest thing to keep in mind through the whole way through. Yeah. I think from the way that the property looks from a physical point of view, making sure that your property is appearing low maintenance and well cared for, making sure that your actual presentation starts literally from the street appeal. So from the curb all the way in, and that's going through, walking up to the property, front of the property, every room, and all the way out the back. So being cared for, low maintenance, target market, and then obviously being serious about the sale when it's actually time to get on the market, because you can't sell a secret. You've got to make sure that you give it everything you can. So for me, presenting a property is about three things being in balance: having the right age at the right price, but then also the right presentation. So you can't market something that's half done. It's got to be done and ready. Put everything into it, and then you're ready to go.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, we're on the same wavelength as far as that's concerned. So one of the things that that I talk about a lot is about the fact that and I'm sorry guys about this, but that women are actually a lot better at renovating because a lot of the, sorry, I know that's very sexist, a lot of the 91% of house buying decisions are made by women.
Yes.
So
Yep.
it just stands to reason that it's it makes sense that you have that advantage in that, you know, you gender-wise, you're sort of on the same wavelength. Is that something that you notice? Do you notice that you find women sort of take it on easier, or 50-50?
No, I think you're absolutely right. So from a buyer's point of view, most women buy houses, and we know that's the absolute fact. So although this is very generalised, and I'm actually not, I'm not in this category because I'm not a good cook, so I'm better on the outside of the kitchen bench drinking wine, watching my husband cook. But in generalising, kitchens, bathrooms, master bedrooms, all of those sorts of areas, absolutely. Hygiene sells, the quality of makeover sells, and for a woman to imagine themselves in that space easily, knowing that things function and things are right, that's absolutely critical. They're my top rooms, I guess, and the reason they're my top rooms is because it's about most women buying property.
Excellent. Thanks very much for that.
That's
now,
okay.
I'll move on to Brian now. Sorry, I'll just switch. We're on to Brian. So, Brian, yours is a big box, the things that, you know, the accounting issues around renovating, and I guess there's a limit to what you can say in a few minutes, but I guess what I was hoping is that you could, I guess, give people an idea of the sorts of things that they need to be thinking about accounting-wise before they take on renovating to make a profit, and, you know, at what point they need to come to see an accountant to, you know, talk about what the implications are.
Well, they really need to come and see their accountant before they buy the property so they can discuss what the transaction is going to be. It's really important to work out, is it going to be a capital transaction, or is it probably going to be of a revenue nature, and then based around that we can work out what sort of structure to hold the property in to get the best tax benefit. So yeah, before any contracts are signed, they need to see their accountant.
Yeah, and because once they've signed the contract on a property and it's going forward, there's not a lot you can do if the property's in the wrong, you know, bought under the wrong name or the wrong legal structure. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very difficult to change it. So if you need to change the name on the contract, you can either have the situation where you have to pay double stamp duty, or the vendor potentially say no, and you're either stuck like that, or you have to back away from the contract and lose your 10% deposit. So it can be fraught with danger. Yeah.
And the other issue that's very big with, I know people ask me a lot about is, can't, you know, if I buy it in my own name and I keep it for 12 months, then I won't have to pay capital gains. Now, what's the deal with that as far as, you know, as far as ongoingly is concerned? I'm assuming that you can get away with it once or twice, but can you do that ongoingly?
Yeah, so if you've held a property for more than 12 months and you sell it, it's a capital gain, and you only pay tax on half of that capital gain, so you get a discount. Now, if you're renovating property and then selling it, and you're doing that on an ongoing basis, that becomes like a business, and so then the nature of that profit is more of a revenue nature. The house is more trading stock rather than a capital item, and then you're not going to get any capital gains tax discounts.
Yeah. Okay, so is there anything else that we should talk about at this point? Do you think that's the basic? So the basic message is to go to your accountant first up to, you know, get the information that's going to be relevant to that property.
Sure. Well, you also need to consider the renovations that you plan to do. Are they going to be substantial renovations? Because if they are substantial renovations, then you need to consider whether there's going to be GST on the sale of that property and all the GST implications. So that's quite important to work out at the start as well.
Yeah, and the GST is actually on the whole value of the sale price. It's not just the renovation or the profit, isn't it?
Correct, yes.
Yeah, so it can be quite significant. Okay, so there's lots of accounting things that our potential renovators need to be aware of. So, and you'll be expanding on that a bit more actually at the event.
Oh, definitely, yes.
Fantastic. Thanks, Brian. Now we'll move on to Mike, our last expert. And Mike is a quantity surveyor from MCGQ Quantity Surveyors. Am I pronouncing that correctly, Mike?
Mouthful, isn't it? It's MCG. You just think of the cricket ground, but we're MCGUS on the website because of we're MCG Quantity Surveyors. So it's tricky. I didn't think it right through when we were naming the company.
That's fine. Actually, now that I can identify with the cricket ground, that makes it much easier. Because every time I go to write your business name, I have to actually go back to double check that I've got the letters in the right space. So perfect. Now, sorry.
You've got the cricket ground now, so you'll be fine.
We're all set. So as far as quantity surveying is concerned, we're talking in relation to, I know that you have a big role also in investment properties, but in this instance we're talking about renovating. So I'm just wondering whether you would like to talk about the value that your service actually gives to renovators.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in terms of quantity surveying services, there's a real split from the construction cost estimating to the tax side of things. In terms of the construction costs estimating, I mean, really that's our specialty. The nuts and bolts of the construction, establishing a budget that you can work to. And obviously, the value that we bring is that it's an independent budget. So you know you've got the scope of what you're going to do, whether it be on the back of a napkin or something detailed with architectural plans, but our budget is independent, as opposed to a builder may give you a budget to say it's going to cost X amount, but it's likely that they're going to front load some of the first components of the renovation, because that enables them to sort of, I guess, get cash flow the rest of the project. So independent budget is important because it's an unbiased expert saying that it's going to cost X amount. That may agree with your estimates, it may disagree, but it also enables you to ensure that you've got a budget for all the works from start to finish. And if anything was to happen, the builder was to walk off site or anything like that, it's making sure there's enough left in the pot to complete the works.
Yeah, yeah. And something that I was actually very surprised about, that I guess I was expecting the cost of that service to be quite prohibitive, but in actual fact I was quite surprised when we had that conversation that it is within the reach of basically every renovator, and I think it's a really important step because particularly with inexperienced renovators, being able to cost things is sometimes a bit of a challenge. And would you have any tips for someone that was embarking on a renovation? At what point in time would be the best time to bring in a quantity surveyor, and any other tips that might be of value?
Sure. I think the most important thing from a quantity surveyor's perspective with a renovation, in terms of when we see costs that are blowing out, is making sure that you've got a very clearly defined scope at the start. Because if you're sort of getting through the property and you've realised you've knocked down a wall and you think, oh, that gives me an idea to do this next part of the project, that's a very expensive way to go, and that's where you can get into some trouble. So if you've got a very clear scope to begin with, then you know exactly what's going to happen from start to finish. There's no changes that are going to help to escalate your costs. So once you get that scope and you lock that in, now if it's a major renovation, it might be worthwhile talking to an architect, but draftsmen can give you a computer-aided design that can show you what it's going to look like in 3D, gives you a real sort of sense of looking at it. I mean, we're used to looking at plans and getting a picture of it in our head, but for a lot of people that are renovating, it's hard to see what that's actually going to look like in a 3D space. So once you've got that scope, the budget is key. So making sure that you've got someone that's costed it out for you properly, that enables you to compare your quotes, enables you to go to tender with a ballpark of what it's going to cost you, and it can help you set aside a contingency amount as well, because as you know, with renovating, there are things and problems that you may encounter that you can't anticipate for until you, say for example, remove the roof and you see that you're going to have some rectification works for termites that have been and gone or something like that. So getting a clear idea of what you're doing, and then getting a good estimate of what that's going to cost, and that really gets you that budget in place so you can monitor those costs from start to finish. We think that's key.
Yeah, that's actually, I'm always sort of trying to hammer home the importance of getting a scope of work complete, and also of not making changes, making decisions up front, because seriously, once you start going down that path, it just blows